Architecture from the Middle Ages, Renaissance, and Islamic world have many differences and similarities. All throughout history, there have been multiple influences that have altered the architecture of the world. Religion, demands for space and elegance, and new insights in building led to changes throughout these times. This is all we know right now. Let's go to the library and ask Miss Anderson to help find us a good book about architecture.
Hey, Miss Anderson, we're researching about architecture on the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and the Islamic period, and we need a good book. Do you know any?
I know just the book.
Wow, this is amazing!
Ah! Whoa! Whoa! Where are we?
I don't know.
Look, there's a scroll.
What does it say?
The biggest idea in the Middle Ages was the theme of Gothic architecture. Gothic architecture was the most prominent form of architecture at the time. You could find it in civic buildings, cathedrals, and churches. The first Gothic church was the Saint Denis Church, which was rebuilt by a French statesman named Suger. Suger is credited for starting the Gothic theme after rebuilding Saint Denis Church. Gothic architecture came from the influence of the High Middle Ages and was created to support large amounts of weight. The demand for Gothic architecture led to a higher demand for architects and artists. An inherent aspect was that Gothic architecture had pointed arches, and Gothic architecture also had more intricate carved decorations than had previously been made on buildings. But the clear, easily comprehended space and mass of the Renaissance architecture distinguished it from the intricate and complex Gothic style.
Whoa, we must be in the Middle Ages because of the book. Let's go see if we can learn anything about Renaissance architecture.
Ah!
Oh, look, we're in the Renaissance.
Hey, look, another scroll. Renaissance architecture revolved around math and science and returned more to the classical Greek and Roman architecture. Knowledge of classical architecture came from the ruins of ancient buildings and the writings of Vitruvius. An important figure in the Renaissance architecture was a man named Vitruvius. Vitruvius wrote a vital book called De Architectura, which laid out a system of mathematical building proportions based on the human body. The capital of the column was the head, the column was the torso, and the base was the feet. This book basically became the Bible of Renaissance architecture. Brunelleschi was another important figure and practically created the dome shape that is often found in Renaissance architecture. He challenged officials to stand an egg on his head and said that if he could stand an egg on its head and they couldn't, then Brunelleschi would be in charge of building the dome. Once the officials gave up, Brunelleschi tried. He broke the bottom of the egg so that it would not fall over. He then said the idea was as simple as his idea for building a dome. The officials allowed him control over the dome after this. One of the greatest problems architects struggled with is the weight of the dome or building being able to stand up. A regular circular dome would not be able to stand on its own without outside support. The idea of making ribbed vaults inside the dome was then created. These rings held up the dome, making it possible for a 140-foot diameter dome to be able to hold up without falling and without outside support.
So did all these ideas stay in Europe, or did they spread to other parts of the world?
They spread to other parts of the world, such as the Islamic civilization.
Let's see what we can find out.
Whoa! Whoa! Now we're in the Islamic world! Hey, look! There's another scroll!
Although the ancient Islamic group started out with only mud houses without any architecture through the course of time, the Islamic world quickly developed some great forms of art in their architecture. The Muslims based their architecture, like many other empires, off of the Roman and Byzantine architecture. They expressed art through their glass windows, their calligraphy, and their use of marble. They also used many geometric shapes when building their buildings. One example is a mosque. Mosques usually incorporated shapes like long rectangular corridors supported by columns. These buildings, along with mausoleum, palaces, and other places, tended to use domes, columns, and different types of arches. These aspects were used to show beauty and intelligence. Glass, mosaic, and marble materials were also used in many different ways to show the beauty of the building. Geometric shapes and glass were also used in these mosaic types of art, once again to express the elegance of their form of architecture in these great palaces.
Wow,
Wow, we sure learned a lot today, but we should probably get back to class. Who knows how long we've been in here?
Margaret, can you give us a brief overview of what you learned today in your research and the similarities of each of them?
Yes. Throughout the Middle Ages, Islamic period, and Renaissance, multiple influences have changed architecture. Powerful architectures from each time period changed and affected each of these building styles. Islamic and Renaissance empire both had a heavy emphasis on domes or variations thereof. They incorporated many forms of geometric shapes and put emphasis on math and science. All three of these time periods were more focused on details, designs, and beauty in these buildings. Another common pattern in all three of these styles were influenced by other people in architecture. Basic or common people like Abbot Suger influenced the start of a new era of architecture. While Roman architecture was the starting point of the architecture in many civilizations, including the Renaissance and Islamic architecture. The Romans used design, detail, and different forms of architecture to help build more ideas for the future of architecture. This not only happened in Europe, but across the world. From the intricate designs of Gothic style to the big and grand styles of Islamic mosques, architecture has not just evolved from itself, but has also moved all across the world, influencing many other civilizations.